Okay, so we're recording again, but just I just want to say something real quick. If people who watch these videos on the regular don't realize, Eric does a setup in the first video, so stick it through to the second and third videos because that's where the meat of the teaching gets. So.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can pull off something here. I'm gonna pick up the, just so you see what I'm looking at when I'm staring out the window. I don't have to reset up my. Can you see that?
Yes.
That's what I'm looking at the window.
Very nice.
Nice.
So, yes, I'm staring off into the distance there. It's there. Anyway, just for what it's worth, a little bit of personal space. There's a camellia tree that still has a few flowers, just thousands of pink blossoms. Last week, the ice storm that came and ravaged this place kind of did away with most of it, but there's still a few. I built this room so I'm right up in the treetop, literally right level with about a 20-foot high tree there. The panoramic view. There's a, is it Peishin, I think, is a panoramic view, or Nun Peishin, like the word nefesh. It's a word for treetop and to swing like a trees. And so what I'm saying is that you look at some of these Hebrew words and you have certain letters, but you can also then look in the dictionary and you get ideas, concepts, the concepts of being up in the treetops or swaying. It's also the word to sift and to sieve, like a sieve, and to have a panoramic view. Reading words and getting pictures in your mind is what reading Hebrew is all about. It's not quite the same as English or Greek, which is a little bit more intellectual or storytelling. So when people say that Greek is linear and Hebrew is circular or more pictorial, I'm just trying to give a sense of that. So anyway, the word Habakkuk, Chet, Bet, Kuf, Vav, Kuf. You look up in the dictionary and it's not there. So you got to break it down. So if you look at Bet, Kuf, Vav, Kuf, it's the word for or Bet, Kuf, Kuf. Kufai, Kuf isn't even there. It means destroyed, laid waste, or empty. And if you look at Het, Bet, Kuf, it means embrace or clasp. It's a picture of a neck choker, like a certain type of necklace. It's also the word for, like on a horse, where you have I don't know if it's called a girth strap, but it's that web, not like a belt actually. What do you call it? I don't know enough about horses, but the strap under the belly of the horse to hold the saddle in place real tight. That's Het Bet Kuf. So to grasp a hold of emptiness is the word Habakkuk. The other interesting thing right in the middle is Bet Kuf, and when you have either Bet Kuf Kuf or Bet Kuf Vav Kuf, even though it means the word empty or destroyed and laid waste, Bet Kuf Yod means expert, learned, or skilled. And I believe, I'd have to look back in the dictionary, but I think it's also the word for bed bug, or to search for bed bugs. So what does that mean? How do you plug that all into the word Habakkuk? A saddle girth strap, which is to embrace tightly something empty or laid waste, and to be an expert, learned, or skilled in searching for bed bugs? I would put that all together and say, kind of like the world at any point, today, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, everything looks like it's gone to ruin. But how do you, instead of embracing the destruction, how do you look through the destruction and nitpick the details of finding the reality, finding the truth. Where's the truth? In Yahuwah's personal words. And you can't get any more original source root than the Paleo-Hebrew. Yahuwah gave us the Paleo-Hebrew. It's just a matter of fact that it's the oldest language on the face of the earth because it's encoded to the sequence of days in Genesis 1 before there was ever an earth or ever a man on the earth. So therefore, because the language is encoded to the 7 days, the Mishkan and the 7 Moedim and the Sabbath days, and Yeshua, who says, I'm not saying my own stuff, I'm only speaking the words that I hear my Father say, and he sits on the gives us the Sermon on the Mount and gives us the Beatitudes, fit to this pattern that these are from heaven, they are not earthly matters. So the matters of the 22 pictographs come right out of the heavens from our Father's mind and heart and Ruach. Therefore, I can with confidence plan to say, I will trust my eternity, my present tense, my salvation on the fact that Yeshua came validating these words and that these words in human form, these 22 letters, are Yeshua. It's not an idolatrous deception of the devil. There can't be anything more true anywhere in the universe than these 22 letters. And I've tried to reevaluate what this stuff is, whether this is true or the grand deception, and I'm convinced that this is the truth. And to turn away from regard of these letters is to embrace emptiness. Anything but the regard of Yahuwah's personal words is chasing after vanity, like what Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, wasn't it? Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, it's a chasing after the wind. Everything except for scrutinizing every word out of Yahuwah's mouth is a Habakkuk, an embracing of emptiness. But to become skilled as an expert in learning the meaning of the words of Yahuwah so that we can Shema is what the point of all the destruction was about. Every time Yahweh destroyed his people, it was because they turned away from his words, went back to idolatry, like we were reading in the book of Judges, and they brought the destruction upon themselves in order to get them back, to fill up the scales of Mishpat, could get them back to ground zero where we could again listen. And that was the reason for the 2,730-year curse. So here we are since 2010, back at ground zero, back at the basic saying, okay, now we can listen to his words. So when you go to Habakkuk in the beginning, in English here, how long, verse 2, how long, O Yahweh, will I cry out to you and you not hear me? How long will I cry out to you regarding injustice and you not save? Why do you allow me to see iniquity and look at evil deeds with robbery and justice before me while the one who carries strife, contention still remains? That's why the Torah is weakened and justice doesn't emerge, since the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice emerges distorted. What he's saying is, if Yahweh set up 20 years for Sisera and then his destruction, if he said there would be peace for 40 years and then Israel does idolatry again and so they bring in more destruction, if Yahweh said there's going to be 7 times 390, Leviticus 26, Ezekiel 4, from 721 BC to 2010 AD, CE, Common Era, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, okay, that's the menorah. That's time and occasion and the dispensation of principalities. Yahweh determined that this is his world. He's the maker, thus the owner, the possessor, Kana Shemayim Vayeretz, the heavens and the earth. He put the stars in their courses. He put the sun and the moon. He establishes kingdoms. He raises them up. He brings them down, and it's all pivoted on the fulcrum of Israel listening. That's why, because it wasn't time yet to answer Habakkuk's mysterious cry. Until when? Ayin Dalet Aleph Nun Hey, Yahweh. But see, Shuati, I will cry for help and no hear. I will Zak, Zion, Ayin Kuf, toward you, but nothing but Hamas, violence. And there's no save, help, and deliver. So I can say, if this 2021 is just another year on the chronological progression of life on earth, then we have nothing to hope for. We have every reason to be just as despaired as 50 years ago, 100 years ago, World War II, World War I, any other era of stupid, bad people trying to destroy the lives of other people. But this isn't just another occasion. This is the occasion of outside the envelope of the curse. And if that's wrong, then why did he say it? If he said, I will multiply your sorrows by 7, and then he gave the terms of the curse in Ezekiel 4 to be 390 years, 7 times 390 is 2,730. If that doesn't mean anything, why did he say it? If he says, after you did your time, I'll allow you to come back, if he didn't mean it, why does he talk about Gimel Lamed? If we read through Habakkuk in chapter 1, there's he's saying in verse 13, your eyes are too pure to see evil. Why do you look upon betrayers? Why do you remain silent when a wicked man swallows up one more righteous than he? Then it goes into chapter 2. In other words, chapter 1 in here is just the terrible Chaldeans, Nebuchadnezzar, the Assyrians, people living in Iraq and the area of Turkey and all. Yahweh had empowered them and called them in and said, this is like one branch of the candlestick. This is their time. They're going to come in. Why? It's Israel's fault. Verse 4, Alcan, that's like the Alcan highway that goes from the United States up through Canada into Alaska. It used to be really treacherous. Now it's kind of a real open highway. But Ayin Lamed hyphen to Kaf Nun literally means of a truth, certainly, absolutely. And then the word Tav, Pei, Vav, Gimel, Tafug, grow numb, evaporate, cause to disappear, removed, weakened, Torah. And there's no blossom of victory. There's the word Nun Zarichet, Natzak, brilliant triumph, Mishpat. Why does it look like there's no balancing of scales? In other words, if we look at the circumstances of human history and life on the earth, there's not necessarily any reason to believe that this word of Torah is true. I can sit there and say, where's the God of the Christians? Why are they getting chopped up and butchered by Islam in Nigeria? Why was there the Inquisition? Why was there the Holocaust? If I look at human history, I can say, it looks like I shouldn't trust the Bible. It looks like I should look anywhere else because the God of the Bible people is asleep or drunk or doesn't exist. But when I read what he said, that it's Israel's fault. Israel was given the truth of the Torah, and if Israel does truth and kindness and justice and mercy, and if Israel listens to Yahuwah, listens to his voice, then suddenly Yahweh will perk up and say, oh, my people. That's why we are listening to these words. That's why we are sitting down on Shabbat. That's why we are eating unleavened bread for a week in the spring and blowing a trumpet on the first day of the 7th month in the fall and living in tents in our backyards to show Yahweh that we're listening to his voice, because that's what he said. He didn't say, if you ask Jesus into your heart, you get to go to heaven. Never said those words. But he did say, listen to my voice, and I will be your Elohim, and I will defend you from your enemies. And I will be your high tower refuge, insurmountably high, of strength, and I will destroy your pursuers when the time comes. When the time comes. And what Habakkuk is looking at is saying, I haven't seen that time yet. And then you get verse 2, and Yahweh says, write the vision and clarify it upon tablets so that a reader may read it swiftly, which is to say quickly and easily. The first word is yod, ayin, nun, nun, yod, which is, let me look at verse 2 here. Verse 2 of Habakkuk chapter 2, vav yod, ayin, nun, nun, yod. Well, that word ayin, nun, nun is cloudy. Yod, ayin, nun is the word ostrich, like the bird. It also means with a purpose. Ayin, nun is the word for the meek, the humble, the ones afflicted with oppression. But it also means to reply or give answer by making it your personal concern and your occupation. What we're doing in this talk here, every one of us on this call have made the study in regard of the Paleo-Hebrew our interest and occupation to prove to Yahweh that we are listening to his voice, because his voice is found in Hebrew, not English or Greek, and in specifically looking at the meanings of the letters. That's ayin and nun. We determined before the talk about the word hasna, which is translated the bush, hey, samic, nun, hey, the tree shape, the samic, the engineered structure, and nun, the meaning that it carries. Well, if nun is that life of meaning that's carried like a fish in the water, like a baby in a womb, a nun in a mem, and samic is the tree that bears fruit, it's the engineered structure, it's the stars in the heaven with a message in the pattern and the design, then the samic is the shape of the letter and nun is the meaning of the letter. The samic is the lines of Torah that carry a meaning which can be determined nun as the Ruach of Elohim is within it and giving it the life that can be sensed. As Judith said, there's something within you that bears reckoning as a gyroscope, as a compass, as an orientation towards life. And the ayin nun nun can be seen as not only the word cloudy, but to do soothsaying and divination. But that's the bad side. You could say just to have an eye, an ayin yod nun, literally weigh, measure, balance exactly, consider carefully. The one who will afflict himself with the interest of responding to Yahweh's voice, making it your personal occupation to regard and calculate what Yahweh has declared in that it was written. Well, that's the first 4 words of this voice. Chazon is vision, prophecy, or divine revelation. Where's the vision, prophecy, and divine revelation? We just spent an hour trying to establish the fact that he is the one who designed these 22 letters and put them in their sequence order to design the language by which Elohim has communicated with the intelligence of humanity, and then he took these 22 letters and manifest them in human form as Yeshua, the Word made flesh, in John 1. And that clarifies, that's the next word, bet aleph resh, explain and make clear, unto hey lamed chet, which is the word moist, fresh, damp, new, and vigor. In other words, it's vigorous. It's where life is. Lamed mem ayin nun, in order that yod resh vav zadi, well, the word resh vav zadi, like resh zadi, means to run. That's where we get the word rats, like rats running, ra'ats, dispatch, quickly, easily. It's the word for jockey, like the guy who rides the horse as fast as he can. And then here's the word kuf vav resh aleph, which is the word to read, or it's actually a reader. Remember, kuf resh aleph Like the first word of Vayikra means to read Hebrew. Bet Vav, accordingly to it. So I can sit there and look at verse 2 here and say that Yahuwah has declared and wrote words of his vision, his heart. Clear, simple letters in Paleo-Hebrew. Daniel, I believe, was commissioned by Gabriel to change the letters into the modern Hebrew. But the old ancient, remember the word Nephal, where you get the word Nephilim, is the root of the word for paleo, Pelamed Aleph, Pelamed Hey, Pelamed Vav, Pelamed Yod. It's all wonder, amazing, hidden, secret. The Psalmic of the alphabet letters is the structural paradigm of the engineered backbone foundation of the kingdom of heaven, of Yahweh's own imagination, his own art, his own expression of himself. And to be able to read that and to say that everything he declares is written, Chet Zion Vav Nun. Chet is this fence, this pasture. Zion is the number 7. It's outside the fence, but here this Zion, literally the number 7, is a sworn vow. Explain and make clear it's for life, in order that the reader may jump on it like a horse. We mentioned last week there's these 2 or 3 words, like this horse race, this running, this, in order that we can ride these words, the message in these words, like a jockey on a horse, sus. That picture of a jockey on a horse is rachav, translated like a knight on a war horse, a charger, like a merkabah. Other words we're going to bump into in this chapter is basically a horse and a chariot. Yahuwah gave us these 22 letters so that we can ride them to a victorious, brilliant triumph, clearly seeing that it's all his writing. It's his promise. It's his declaration. It's his revelation of itself. It's not witchcraft. It's not divination. It's not sorcery. It's not vain philosophy. It's not grasping, embracing emptiness. It's absolutely the only reality we have. So that's the verse that somebody else said, oh, you should write out a list of what you want so you can manifest it. There may be a truth to that, but if you were to write down these 22 letters and look at that and realize Yahuwah gave us a personal promise, and if we can wrap our mind, wrap our heart, wrap our conscious intelligence, what did Yahweh say? Wrap your heart around that and trust. He said it. That's the truth. That's it. There's nothing else. We have nothing else. We have no other hope. We have no other expectation. We have no other promise. We shouldn't fear the promises declared by our enemies. I'm going to eat you. I'm going to tear you up. I'm going to, whatever the voice of the giants are. But we have to trust in Yahweh's voice. Read it swiftly. Read it easily. Read it without mistake. Okay. That's the way I take this verse. So I take this verse, and like what we were starting to say earlier, the interesting thing is once you learn how to read Hebrew and start reading these words, you realize that these words are written again and again, repeatedly and forcefully, which is the word ayin vav dalet, which is the next word in verse 3. Ki od, kaf yod, kind of like a picture of my hand raised, I swear, thus, therefore, because, when, while, if, in which case, kaf yod, ayin vav dalet, again, repeatedly, forcefully, still, yet, it's enduring. Chazon, the vision of prophecy, la moed. Very interesting choice of words here. Lamed mem vav ayin dalet. According to the moed. What moed? The moed of Leviticus 23. This looks like it's the clue that the witness and testimony repeated constantly is locked in, that the vision is found because it's keyed to, like this key that I have up here. There was one tooth that, interesting enough, you asked about it last week, Kurt. I found this key, and on it is printed a 1 and a 2. That's number 12. That means teach and learn. And I put it on this spiral chain, but it's also Aleph and Bet. That's father. It's also desire. It's also vigorous, youthful, verdor, which is this synonym with Lamed Het, moist, fresh, new, vigorous. And it's like the vigorous, kind of like a one-toothed key, but it's actually, you could say there's 7 teeth on the key of the Mishkan pattern, is that it unlocks everything. Our Father's heart, his vision, is locked in according to the Moed. That's the first 4 words of verse 3. But it's a snare, a trap, a disappointment, a Yod Pei Het. Unto Kuf Zadi, unto the end, or at the time of waking up, you could say, and no Yod Kaf Zayin Bet, lie, deception, failed, disappointment. No dry spring. Aleph Mem, if, yoke to Yod Tav Mem Hey. That's the word innocent, artless, integrity, perfect, or perfected. That the root of that word is Tav Mem. Tav Mem Hey Mem. Wait for a hook or a fish, or waiting, fishing with a hook, or waiting or expecting is chaka. Wait for it because it's going to arrive. Bet Aleph, Yod Bet Aleph, no delay, no shame. It's not going to be late. Yod Achar, that's the same word for other, or gods of others. Achrim is the same exact word as Yod Aleph Ket Resh, but it means perfectly on time. In other words, what Yahweh says will happen in its time. It will not be late. It will not be delayed. You will not be put to shame. When it happens, you'll realize, oh, perfect timing. Aptly suited. Everything just like he said. It's not a lie. It's not a deception. What did he say? It's in these 22 letters. And they're keyed to the Moedim. At the perfect time, accordingly, just like the 7 arms of the menorah. Just like the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. Just like the 7 stars in Yeshua's hand. They're all parallel, like a fractal pattern of each other, which is a paradigm psalmic pictogram. I'm just mentioning these things because the only way for any of us to get anything out of this is to sit and stare at these words, stare at the definitions, stare at the letters, and I'm just trying to give you stepping stones along the way. Verse 4, behold, heedless, reckless, Ayin Pei Lamed Hey, not doing straight, lo yashara, his soul, nefasho, bet vav, in them, and righteous, vezadik, in the condition of confidence, faithfulness, trained and trusted. Bet, aleph mem vav nun, tav vav, yod het yod hey, he will live. Basically, what this verse 4 is saying is, the ones that are heedless and reckless, swelling up in their own strength and not going straight, his own soul betrays him. Therefore, you cannot trust that inner compass. There's a verse that says, the human heart is desperately wicked. Who can trust it? Who can find it? Who knows it? So there is this inner thing that you can't necessarily trust. But the one doing righteousness, and the word Aleph Mem Nun, or Aleph Mem Vav Nun, where we get the word Amen, or Abraham had Ha-Amunah, believed, Aleph Mem Nun. Aleph, first person, I will, Mem Nun. Take it to heart. Take what to heart? Mem Nun follows Kaf Lamed. Kaf Lamed represents the Torah. within the secret place, the fence of the Het Tet Yod. So the constantly referring back to the alphabet to look at the alphabetic letters in sequence, going back to this Mishkan pattern correlated to the days of creation and the festivals, the Moed and the Mishkan and the Beatitudes, those four things, synchronizing all those, is Lamed Mem Vav Ayin Dalet, La Moed. It's not just according to the festivals, it's going back to the witness and testimony of what's built into the pattern. And the one who has the confidence in being trained according to the words of the Torah, and I'm saying that because Aleph Mem Nun, I know that Mem Nun in the letter sequence follows Kaf Lamed, which fits the pattern of the Torah instructions. The 12th letter, like the key, other side here on the key on this hat. Teach and learn, repeat, around and around, again and again. Ayin Vav Dalet. Keep teaching the Torah and have confidence in that he will find life. He will live. That's the last word of verse 4, Yod Chet Yod Hey. And then in the next bit of chapter 2 is a half a dozen places where he says, woe to him who does certain things. And you could say that's either a person or a nation. Woe to him that amasses that which is not his. He burdens himself heavily with thick mud. You can picture just getting built heavier and heavier with mud until you can't hardly, you think you're having a wonderful life and you're acquiring all sorts of good things, but you've cursed yourself. Like that verse previously that just says his own soul betrays him. Woe to him who has pillaged many nations. Woe to him who gains evil profit for his house, to set his nest up high, thinking that he's out of the reach of evil. Woe to him who builds a city of bloodshed and establishes a city with iniquity. Woe to him who gives his girl intoxication to look upon her nakedness. Woe to him who says of wood, wake up, and to silent stone, arise, which is doing witchcraft. I find it disturbing that the history of the United States is that it has done all these things, not only to the indigenous people that lived on this continent, but to people all around the world. Woe to that nation. And whatever evil is about to befall the United States, it's because it has it coming, because it's done all these things. Verse 16, you are, as far as giving intoxication to look upon their nakedness, you are also, this is that whatever goes around comes around. This is the balanced scales of Mishpat. The way of a man is returned on his own head. You are also given to drink and become confounded. The cup of the right hand of Yahuwah is turned upon you. So I have to say, whatever Yahweh has set up, whether it's bringing in the Chaldeans with Nebuchadnezzar, he said, Nebuchadnezzar is my drawn sword, whether he sends his people to Egypt to be put into slavery, whether he brings in the Assyrians or the Nazis or the commies or the Americans or the British or the French or the Spanish or the Germans or the Aztecs or the Chinese, it's like, it's all for balancing scales. But soon as Israel turns back to the words of Yahuwah and Shema, the voice, the call of Yahweh, everything's put back in order. That is the antidote. Shema, the voice of Yahweh, for Israel too. Then there's an interesting verse, chapter 2, verse 14. Ki tamelo, for the fullness, haaretz, the earth, knowledge, la da'at, et kavod Yahweh ka mayim, like water covers the sea, Yod Kaf Samik Vav, Ikaso El Im. Like waters cover the sea, water is the sea. What is this saying? It says the knowledge of the kavod of Yahweh will cover the earth or fill the earth like water. That word kaso is also thrown, or to conceal, or to hid himself upon the sea. The sea is water. What's he trying to tell us? Has the knowledge of the glory, the weight, the honor of Yahweh covered the earth like water covers the sea? Nobody knows who Yahweh is. That's why there's 50,000 different denominations and a bunch of different religions. Well, if the only truth is in the Paleo-Hebrew, the only reckoning of actuality is in knowing these 22 letters, then the only way for the kavod of the da'at of Yahuwah to fill the earth is for this language to be restored and no longer be a hidden secret, to be proclaimed, which is exactly, I think, what the meaning of the Chareshim in Zechariah 2, translated sylvan, thick, dark, magic words. They're not magic words. They're not witchcraft. They're not occult Kabbalist. They're just words that were lost because Daniel was told to hide them and seal them. They're just words that were left as a secret until people can come back and wrap their minds and hearts around the look of these 22 letters. So going back to Isaiah 29:18, how can the deaf Cheresh hear the words of the Sefer? How can they shema the words of the Sefer? Because they're purely literate. They're the very letters that were carved. That's the other word for Cheresh, carved into pottery. That word Cheresh means a worker in pottery, wood, or metal. A worker, one who engraves. And what do you engrave artwork with? Designs, letters, Paleo-Hebrew letters. It's understanding these Paleo-Hebrew letters that you can hear the words of the Sefer, and from illiterate ignorance, your eyes will behold the very words of Yahweh Eloheinu. I see this study, looking back at these ancient Hebrew words, as fulfilling all these prophecies. And then it throws us into Habakkuk Chapter 3. To say, verse 19, woe to him who says wood, wake up, and to silent stone, arise. There's something about witchcraft that will do that, about some Kabbalist golem making some earth creature and bringing it to life. And it's like, stay away from all that stuff. It's all a travesty of abomination. If we get into Habakkuk's actual prayer, first word, the prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, regarding, that's Ayin Lamed, and then Shin Gimel Yod Nun, absorbed in vanities, similar to the word Habakkuk itself, embracing emptiness, absorbed in vanities. Yahweh, I have heard that you listen to he who fears me, or I have seen, or I have feared. There's three ways to read the next word, Yod Resh Aleph Tav Yod. Yahweh, then the word Pa'alka, which is Pei Ayin Lamed, which is to incite or activate, which is where, like the name of the Apostle Paul, to be induced or incited to activity in the midst of years, but the word years is shanim, which means also different and hateful. So he says, I understand, Yahweh, that because of what Israel did, it's been ordained that you turn your face away and take on a different appearance as a vengeful, nasty monster deity that everybody hates, and you hate them because of what's been done. That's the term of the 2,730-year curse. But in the midst of that era of different hatefulness, cause us to live. And in the midst of this different hatefulness, make known, that's announce or make known knowledge. While you're not on speaking terms, Resh Gimel Zayin, remember, Zakor, Rachem, compassion and mercy. If we could say, why does Yahweh still answer the prayers of people that don't listen to his words? Maybe he's answering the prayer of Habakkuk, verse 2 there. He's saying, listen, I know that Yahweh, you have to turn your face and we won't be able to find you, and that you'll be seen as this big, ugly monster who doesn't care and doesn't answer, and who has no covenant with his people, and his people will be lost. The lost 10 tribes lose their identity. There's the Inquisition. There's the Holocaust. Even the ones that kept their identity will be tortured and tormented. But please sustain knowledge and life, and remember Rachem. That brings us present tense. Verse 3, if these, accordingly, death has been appointed, Mem Tav Yod Mem Nun, it's also where you get the word for Yemen, the country to the south, it will arrive, and Kadosh from Mount Paran, Selah. Well, the word Paran, not just a mountain, the word Aleph Resh Nun is a pine tree, glowing red, dark, but it's also glory, headdress, diadem, some kind of a powerful crown of, might make you picture this movie where there's some flaming head with dark red and looming, something tremendous is about to happen. Something you might see in a Lord of the Rings movie, or it's like some animated scene. Even if there's death appointed, Mem Tav, Yod Mem Nun, to be appointed, it will arrive, and the Kadosh. So he's basically saying, I know that no matter how bad things get, the promise of your glorious intervention, again, hinged upon Israel returning to the Torah, which is why we, as a token of Israel, are returning to these words. It's to play into the if-then clause that has to happen. Yahweh will intervene in the midst of world affairs and overthrow Sisera, overthrow Goliath, overthrow Assyria, overthrow Nebuchadnezzar, overthrow Egypt, all for the sake of his Kadoshi Israel. So we're choosing to be Israel. Covered throne, the heavens, Hodah, give praise, thanks, or reverberating Tahilat, the praise, the glory from the fullness, the earth. That's the rest of verse 3 there. I believe it's basically saying that even the Kaf Somic Hay, like the same Somic Hay, that's the word throne. It's also the word for covered, but it's also going back to that Hay Somic or Somic Hay. It's the paradigm, the way the heavens were built and what the stars proclaim is a second voice of witness to all these matters. That's the reverb resounding of the word Hodah, Hey Vav Dalet Hey. And the word Tahilet is Tahilet, Tav Kaf Lamed is the color blue, but this is Tav Hey Lamed Tav, which is praise, glory, and fame, the word for Psalms, but it's also error and folly and sin, the fullness of the earth. So no matter how far astray the earth goes, that voice of truth remains. It's in the stars, it's in the Aleph Bet, it's in the Torah, it's in these 22 letters. Verse 4, rise, the word naga, vav nun gimel hey, it means shine, brightness, but it's also revise and correct like light, and exist horns, kufresh nun yod mem, from the hand of his and their name. Chet bet yod vav nun, chavion is hiding place, latent, subliminal, secret. It's the lair of Ayin Zion Hey, which is the fortress, splendor, and might. The whole reason for going back and retranslating all these words is to do what verse 4 is saying. Correct, revise the translation according to the light of the reality of the Kufresh Nun, which is the not just horn, but its glory, splendor, majesty, might, prowess, the exaltation. It's the status Yahweh promised his people if they'd walk in his ways. And from there, Vasem, Havion, that's the hiding place, the fortress that he hid them. He told Daniel to hide these things. Like I say, I keep reading these words. thousands of times I keep seeing a validation of this entire study. So going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, yeah, but what if we're wrong? Time after time, word after word, this proves it's not wrong. Return to Yahweh's words. It's all there. Deuteronomy 30, go back to Yahweh's words. Verse 5, his face, he will send you the bar. His face is projected in his word. He will export, publish, discharge as a flame, firebolt, spark, kindle. It's also the word for demon, pestilence, and bird of prey. Resh, Shin, Pei, Rashaf, Lamed, Resh, Gimel, Lamed, Yod, Vav. Regarding his regal, feet, leg. Remember, it's the culture of the kingdom, the custom, habit, and tradition, the culture of the kingdom. It's the way his kingdom operates. Again, it validates in his word that he has published is like a firebolt, the culture of his kingdom. And it's housed in, hidden in the letters of his language, his alphabet, his Moedim, his Sabbath day, the sequence of days of his creation. Everything testifies repeatedly that these letters, these words that we study are his personal face on display. And to say, stare at the letters, contemplate the letters, write them with your own hand. Look at his words, even if you don't have a dictionary, just look at his words written by these letters. That's where he has revealed himself. That's where he has hidden himself. Verse 6, Ayin Mem Dalet, arranged in columns, estimation, valuation, to stand, placed, they continue and persist. Just like the columns on the Greek Parthenon, the temple of one of their deities, those columns which hold up the roof of that building are the position of these letters holding up the entire universe. They're the legs of his Mashiach, you might say. And Yod Mem Dalet Dalet is tailor-made to fit, measure, index, extended, the earth on exhibition, Resh Aleph Hey, Vav Yod Tav Resh, which is to say the excellent, excess, profit, the remnant of he who will seek, Yod Tav Resh, and explore Goyim, nations, Yod Tav Pei Zadi Zadi Vav, explode, break, destroy, asunder. Harari, Hey Resh Resh Yod, hyphen with Ayin Dalet. It's like growing in the mountains until Shin Chet Vav, swimming. Shin Chet is also the root of the word Mashiach, which is also talk and meditation. So something like it's growing in the mountains, Harari. Something that will explode and detonate the nations. Why, going back to Zechariah 2, why will the Chareshim, the four carpenters, terrify the nations? I think what it's saying, I believe what it's saying, is that when we go back and regard these words, these encrypted letters that everybody else thinks are mute, they can't hear them, they're deaf, but we can read them. We can read these words because they're pictographic letters, and even the illiterate, ignorant can see Yahuwah's own secret plans to bless his people and crush his enemies. And that's the potential, the Gimel Bet Ayin, which is translated hills or heights, which stands forever, Olam. And the custom, the halakha, the Hey Lamed Yod Kaf Vav Tav, of that the way of walking, which is eternal, which is not subject to eras of various nations' cultures, like the arms of the menorah that represent the various dispensations of time or the different kingdoms that get to rule the world. Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Persia, Rome, the various different alternatives but that which is sustained and eternal is the culture of Yahweh's kingdom. And those who walk in his way endure forever. And it's carried by those who bend their head, which is ayinun, which is also shin het, which is also to swim, which is the root of the word to go down into a pool of water, which is also the root word of Mashiach, which has to do with talk and meditation, which has to do with hey gimel hey. When you start learning these words, they're synonyms that you can plug into what he's talking about. Verse 7, tachat, which is where you stand, the ground under your feet, which is also fear and terror. Aleph Vav Nun, is trouble, sorrow, idolatry, wickedness. It's a deed of purchase. You buy terror when you pervert what Yahweh said. I will see on exhibition my tent like a spindle. Kaf Vav Shin Nun, that's not really a word you can find, but Kaf Vav Shin is a spindle, a spool upon which everything turns. Yod Resh Gimel Zion Vav Nun is agitate, irritate, vex, anger, quaking. And then Yod Resh Yod Ayin is a hanging curtain. So shaking like a hanging curtain, like how easily rattled a curtain is. Catching the breeze, the earth with strife. So Yahweh's projecting here that there's going to be a time of great disturbance. Or this is actually Habakkuk talking about this, projecting a time of trouble and terror, his tent blowing like a curtain in the winds. But verse 8, there's understanding. Bet Nun, hey Bet Nun, hey Resh Yod Mem. Well, Nun hey Resh is the word flowing, streaming, shining, beaming. Bet Nun hey is understanding. Resh Yod Mem is the highest, the greatest. Bet Nun is sun, so S-O-N. So there's something about understanding, and then there's the Het Resh Hey of Yahweh, the hot, burning, vexed, angry contention of Yahweh. And then Aleph Mem, if, mother, or on condition. And then there's that word for flowing, streaming again. And then Aleph Pei Kaf, your nose, your anger. If Aleph Mem, stage, Bet Yod Mem, that's like a theater stage, or to put something, to organize it in such a way. Remember, I'm trying to show you that this word of to stage human history, to stage the dispensations, to stage the narrative story of the history of the earth. Again, the fulcrum of the teeter-totter is Israel listening, Shema, the call, the voice, by learning how to read Kara, Kufresh Aleph, the Dabar, the words, and then walking Halakha on the derek, the conduct, way, and manner of his people, trusting in him, in his words, to be true, no matter what things look like, trusting with a heart of confidence, and doing truth, kindness, justice, and mercy. That's the bottom line of this whole thing. And then when Kaf Yod teamed up, Rakav, Tav, Resh, Kaf, Bet, upon your horse, your chariots, salvation. That's the last word of verse 8, Yod, Shin, Vav, Ayin, Hey, Yeshua, Yeshua. If, when, what? Teamed up upon your horses, your chariots? I missed one word. If to stage Ayin, Bet, Resh, Tav, Yod. That's the word Eber, which is Hebrew, which is pregnant or angry or forgiveness, transfer, past tense, region beyond, pardon, intercalate. If you could just forgive us, mount up your chariots and your horses and come save us. If you could just forgive us. We stand now in the phase of two aspects of forgiveness. One, Yeshua on the cross. And two, we've put in the 2,730 years of the curse. So the time of that Yahweh's face against us as the big ugly monster is past tense. It's Hebrew. It's Ayin Bet Resh. That's it. I can choose to fix my heart on Yahweh's time of Shana, being different, being angry, being hateful, is past tense. The same way that Daniel determined it should be past tense. The same way that when the day came that they left Egypt with a high hand and a powerful ravaging of that country, it was exactly to the day, 430 years since the day he promised Abraham, it says. Everything in perfect timing, not a day late. And we have to count on that. Verse 9, uncover, awakening, revival, vigilance, your bow. But that word kuf tav also means unintelligible, difficult, and severe, to ask hard questions. Shin bet ayin vav tav, regarding the vow, regarding being satiated. This concept of the 2,730-year curse being satisfied and suddenly waking up to say, what the heck, we're in a whole different reality than ever anybody on the face of the earth has ever experienced, seems to be what this is talking about, the first 4 words of verse 9. And then the word mem tet vav tav, mem tet is the word for tribes, spread out, bent down. All these years, the 12 tribes, the lost 10 tribes have been shoved down with their face in the mud and letting the overlords bear upon us and ruin us. It's not the end of the story. The word amer is a declaration. Selah is to weigh, measure, weigh it. Put it into scales and weigh it. And remember what he just said in chapter 2, woe to that person, that corporation, or that nation which builds itself on robbery, lies, murder, stealing, everything that's been going on in America, as well as the other countries, but it's everything that's been going on. They weigh themselves down like being caked in mud. And the next word, naharot, flow, stream, shine, beam. Then the next word, bet kuf ayin, means cleave, split open, assault, or take by a sudden storm the earth. Okay, so we are reading the declaration that regardless of what things look like, I can fully expect that any instant, any moment, just like Jesus appearing in the sky in the second coming, any moment, suddenly, just what Yahweh said is going to happen, and I can absolutely count on it with a confidence of heart. Do not allow myself to wonder, to ponder, to, oh no, what if it's not true? How many times do I need to see in these words it reiterated again and again, repeatedly and forcefully? That's the word ayin vav dalet. Verse 10, resh aleph vav kaf. You see it, allow to perceive, yod chet yod lamed vav, militarize, hey resh yod mem, the mountains, the great things, the zayin resh mem, flow pouring forth, swept away violently like a current of water. Hebrew, crossover, past tense, Natan, give or teach, to home, deep abyss, unfathomable emptiness. His voice, kolo, great, resh vav mem, yod dalet yod hey vav, sufficiently enough, aggressively, his arm, carry away, nun shin aleph, transport. It's like, somehow, this is like Habakkuk had this vision where he could just picture that suddenly Yahweh's arm intervenes and makes it all happen, just like he said. And so I can look back then at the alphabetic letter sequence and say, I have to be able to read in that entire sequence as a fractal root the pattern of exactly what he's talking about. Something about Yahweh giving great teaching and then it gets locked up and lost. Well, there, hey vav Zion. Oh, there's Yeshua put to the cross. But hey Zion and hey, or Zion, excuse me, Zion hey means this. Zion aleph tav also means this, like with an exclamation point. Zion is to be adorned with weapons, or Zion is to be adorned with a crown, like a crown of thorns, a weapon, which is a crown. Zion is to put on a spectacular regard, like the seventh day, the Sabbath, to give a vow. But then it was thrown into a tomb. It was lost. It was like Yeshua crucified and thrown into the crypt. But then turned to explosively come out. Yes.
I'm looking for a place to stop.
Okay, just give me a moment. I'm right at the tail end here of this. What I'm saying is that to look at the fractal pattern in the alphabet to validate human history is that if we are at the place of Pezadi, these words flowering, blossoming, it's Yeshua coming out of the grave, it's Israel coming out of dispersion, it's us coming out from under the oppression of the overlords that Yahweh gave as interim custodians of all his blessings. And if that's where we're standing, then we have to expect to see their crushing demise in a flash flood of Yahweh streaming, because we've chosen to turn back and shema his call, hear his voice. That's the upshot of the reason for doing all this. That's the end of verse 10. Go ahead, Kurt.